Yo, welcome back to another episode of Mental Health Monday here with Jenna Camille. What's good?
What's up?
I am coolin'. How are ya?
I'm doing good. It's been a very busy day, but I'm glad to be here and glad to be talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah. You know, we've been going back and forth, almost missed each other. Yeah. It was a day. It was definitely a day. So tell the folks what you do.
I am a musician. I am a producer. I'm a keyboardist. I'm a songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an instrumentalist. I am many things involving the art of music.
Okay. What's the importance behind your craft when it comes to music?
I think the main thing is that I want to be a representative of where I come from and a representative of my culture.
Mm-hmm.
And just a representative of, you know, the life that I've experienced that I know is not, I'm unique, but a lot of my experiences aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to serve as another representation of, you know, things that other people might feel or might want to connect to or connect with, and hopefully allow people to hear and see themselves through me and through my work.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me about how feelings affect your music.
I am a very introspective writer. I was talking to a friend about this. I have a hard time writing Joni Mitchell, or not to say that she's not in touch with herself, but, you know, being able to write about a story or make up a story that has to do with something that you saw, like a bird flying in the air, or, you know, a train moving by. Everything is guided by what has happened or what I feel or what I expect to feel, or it's very driven by my emotions and the things that I care about. And so it's a good chunk. I would call it the motor behind what I do.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever have to visit dark spaces for certain tracks?
I try not to intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
I think I do find that I tend to create more when I am in darker spaces,
mm-hmm.
Which is interesting. But I try not to be like, okay, let me go back to this point in my childhood where I, you know, didn't get enough attention or something so that I can write this song.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to use my music necessarily for therapy, even though it is very therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just kind of be in connection with something and allow it to express itself out of me. And if it's dark, then it's dark. If it's motivating, then it's motivating. Whatever it is that is seeping out, I'd rather just allow it to.
I got you.
Yeah.
All right, so what makes that experience of music itself therapeutic for you?
Because it allows me to express myself in a way that hasn't always been easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been, even since I was a child, I've always been someone who has struggled a little bit with words and voicing certain things and certain feelings and emotions, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like music gave me the space to do that in a way that felt uninterrupted, and I wasn't in a position to be judged. I was able to kind of release it and leave it there. So it's definitely been healing in that way.
Can you describe the struggle of not being able to release your feelings on something that is good?
Oh, man, yeah. Ooh, that's beautiful. I think, and I don't mean to make this a moment where I bash my family or bash anyone, but I think I grew up in a very critical environment where the negative was the first to be pointed out. And if we were lucky, we'd get to the positive, but it took a lot of dealing with the negative before you could hear a positive thing. So I think that is just how I've learned to relate to myself and then relate to others. And it's something I'm working on, but I realized that it's so funny that you asked me that, because I recently realized this maybe a couple of weeks ago, or and it's really sinking in now. I have a hard time expressing the positive before the negative. And it's almost like I can feel that tension when I don't express the negative. And I can feel that tension when I'm expressing the positive. Even just to say, you know, I love you sometimes, I realize like, why does that feel so hard? So I think that has to do with just, once you normalize something, it's very hard to shift, because it's so many things that crumble once you break that normalization. So, great question.
No, you said it, and like as soon as you said that, for me that was fascinating, because someone having a hard time expressing what's wrong, that's to be expected. That's like the status quo. Someone having a problem with expressing what's giving them happiness and joy, I don't hear about that a lot. So as soon as you said that, I was like, I gotta ask. That's a talking point. My college coach at Catholic University of America, when you didn't do a great job, when you did a great job, it was, that's not bad.
Yes.
I
can never fully go there.
And when you did a bad job, it's, this could be better. Just,
that's me all the way. It's like, it's, I'm good on that's dope, and that's dope still is very close to that's not bad. It's just like it's just like right above there, and that's probably as far, because I think also just having that art background and going to a art high school and having so much art training where you're trained and in some ways trained on a European standard to be able to identify what is good, what is bad, what is strong technique, what is weak technique.
Which art high school?
I went to Duke Ellington.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, that's kind of ingrained in me as well. I don't know why the discomfort though, and that's something that I've been exploring lately, is why does it make me feel uncomfortable just to say that was great, or you look great, or you're beautiful, or I'm so happy to have you, or I don't know if it's the vulnerability. I think there's something that feels safer about being negative, because in some ways it keeps a distance. You know?
Okay, so let's talk about distance and the joy and fear of distance. How do you treat distance, and is it necessary?
I have an interesting relationship with it, because I love distance until I don't. It's like I have a hard time participating or engaging in the things that would nurture closeness and intimacy. And because I struggle with that, I've learned to prefer to be by myself because I don't have to struggle with myself.
Yeah.
You know, it's easier for me to socialize with me. So I think that's, you know, just something that has been easy. But then I noticed that it makes me further away from people. And it makes it harder for me to come back in and engage. So
let's talk about coming back in.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Tell me about the art of coming back in after distance.
Ooh, it's a tough one because you feel a lot of guilt because so much, and I think this is something that I feel like we all, in the age of like microwave relationships and microwave like expectations where this has to be now. I thought about one, on average, I think I'm having about 10 conversations at the same time a day. You know, on average. Yeah. And that's text message, that's phone calls, that's Instagram, that's Facebook. Yeah. There's so much chatter. Yeah. So it goes into this concept of ghosting. People say, "Oh, ghosting is bad and you should never do that." But if you think about it, how many relationships are we trying to maintain every day? Yeah. And so much happens to you and to a person in a span of time, minutes, hours. I can't possibly explain to you, every last one of you. I can't explain to you why I cannot bring forth the energy to connect. All I know is that right now I can't. I just can't. And so we live in a society that, you know, we have expectations, and we were actually talking about that before, where we have expectations based off of our own backgrounds and our own values. And when you know you haven't met that person's expectation, you feel like a failure, regardless of whether it's your fault or not, or whether you actually did something wrong intentionally. You still feel that guilt because you didn't live up to whether it's their standard or the social standard, the socially agreed upon standard.
Which means you didn't agree to it. That's what everybody else
Yes, and so now you are exiled, and it's just like, or you feel exiled, or you exile yourself. So yeah, it makes coming back harder and more painful.
What's painful about that experience? Because you said more painful, which means there's layers to pain.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's the fear. Like, fear is painful. Yeah. All the things that your mind comes up with in your head that could go wrong, that person is saying, that person is mad, that person you're projecting. They are going wrong to you. Yes. They are going wrong right now. And then it just creates this chaos in your mind that feels like an eternity. But it's just like, it's literally the difference between writing a text message that takes 5 seconds or making a phone call that's going to take you 5 minutes to have, or a conversation that's going to take you 5 minutes to have. But inside of here, it's taking years, eons. You're traveling through space in here just to get to that point. And that process is painful. It's very hard because you feel exhausted after all of that. All those scenarios. You know, it kind of, I don't know if you're seeing Black Mirror where... you have that episode, I think is White Christmas, where it's like when they have these worlds inside of the worlds, inside of the worlds, inside of the worlds, and they're all happening at the same time.
Yeah, that's who's supposed to keep track of all this.
Yes, and which reality is the right one, I guess. You know.
Would you say sometimes you have to pick and choose your reality?
Yeah. Sometimes I have to pick mine. Sometimes I have to pick what I think is theirs.
Have you ever had to help someone readjust their interpretation of you and what you're going through?
Yeah, and that was hard.
Okay.
It was hard. Because, again, we're talking about different experiences of time. Their experiences of time is, oh, maybe I wasn't there for them. Maybe I wasn't, present for this moment, or maybe they, I didn't respond to this question, and my experience of time is different, because for me it's, I'm going through a crazy thing, and to have to explain that is hard, because I had to remove my ego a little bit and recognize that we are all a part of a collective experience here, and we need each other, and recognizing when it is time to show up and put your stuff aside for a second and show up is important. But also learning how to prioritize that is hard, because how many people would you consider to be in your circle? How many people would you consider to be your friends or your family? You can't possibly have that with everybody, So.
Do you think coming out of dark spaces or helping folks readjust their image of you, that people need to learn to put their ego to the side? Because no one can experience your pain, but they can understand that you had something that they've never experienced themselves, and even if they did, the level wouldn't be the same.
Right. I think so. I think that's a great lesson. I think that we all could afford to do that and stop being so quick to react based off of. I understand that it's self-protective, and I think having a layer of self-protection is important. I'm not saying be a doormat, but what I am saying is that if there's an issue, I just confront it and talk about how you feel. And say, hey man, I was hurt that you didn't call me. And let that person have an opportunity to tell you what's going on with them, so that you guys can connect with each other and understand that you all are going through an experience, and each experience is valid, and each experience is great, and it's important, it's unique, and it's important to each one of you. And respect that, but also respect what you need for yourself and communicate what you need for yourself, and don't let your social expectations and your agreed upon social cues, because we all coming from different tribes, and dictate your ability to connect with somebody just because they disappointed you in that moment.
No, that's real. What artists do you listen to when you have those moments? Michelle Indegeocello is somebody I constantly refer to, because their music is so emotive, so powerful, and I'm a very sensory person. What does emotive mean?
It just, when I listen to it, I feel like I'm traveling elsewhere. Like, I feel like it's basically tickling at each part of your mind, any just like synapse, just like it just kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but it
stimulates.
Yes, and it brings you into this space where you're thinking about something. And it could be trauma, it could be a relationship, it could be, who knows, insecurity or whatever, I don't know. But it triggers that, and it kind of brings you into this space of like, not necessarily feeling that, but like feeling something. It's not just listening to music. It's not like, oh yeah, this joint, I like this bass line and this song, it's not just a groove. Even though it can be, but there's still some that takes you on a journey that feels very spiritual.
So would you call your experience of the human experience something spiritual, or do you find spirituality?
I definitely think it's spiritual. I see myself as a spiritual being, and I know some people might think of hooty or whatever. But I believe that I am a spiritual being that exists in a physical body, and I am composed of many things. I'm a part of many things. And I think to limit myself to just being Jenna, or just being a woman, or just being queer, or just being an American, or just being an artist and a commodity and something that sells something on Instagram, or is to kind of eliminate, I don't know how to put this, but I think it just disconnects you from what existed before you did, you know, because obviously you didn't exist for eons, something else did and brought you here, and you're a part of that, and I feel like I owe it to that thing to represent my life and my music in that way.
Okay, so let's talk about life and unlife.
Okay.
Term I came across on TikTok, and I was like, I'm gonna start using that.
Okay.
So, what is there a pro of struggling with suicidal ideations?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the pro and what's the con?
The pro is you become more sensitive to what other people are going through. You start to wonder if other people are going through that, and you become more cautious about how you communicate with others, how you relate to others. You're more thoughtful because you're thinking so much anyway.
Would you say you weren't as thoughtful as a person until you had that experience?
No, but I think that until I had that experience, actually, yeah, I think until I had experience, I wasn't even aware of the idea of thoughtfulness or selfishness or selflessness. I wasn't aware of any of these concepts because I didn't it took something to cause me to reflect. And that just happened to be that. But to be honest, I've always, as far back as I can remember, as far as I think my, memories for it as a child, I've always felt, if not suicidal, unhappy.
Okay.
And
let's start with unhappy then.
Yeah.
Before the jumping into the
Sure.
other shit. Describe what unhappiness is.
It was just a general feeling about myself as I related to my family, as I related to people in school, as I related to myself.
Yeah.
There was something that I felt intrinsically that was different or odd about me.
Yeah.
And I know nowadays everybody says they're weird, and I don't know. Maybe we all are, but I know when I was a child, I thought I was really weird.
Yeah.
And I just remember the things that how I used to entertain myself sometimes, even when I would be at school. I remember one time I would sit by myself, and I was supposed to be doing a math lesson by myself, and I had these quarters, a pile of quarters. I don't know why I had so many quarters. I mean, you're 6. Kids do weird shit. And I had a pile of quarters in my pocket. And mind you, I'm by myself. And I would just, every 5 seconds, I would tip the quarters out, and then I would just pile them up and put them back in my pocket. I did it for like 15, 20 minutes or so until my teacher called me and she was like, stop. But I was like, I look back on it like, what are you doing? And now if I were to have a child and that child would do that, I'd be like, what's up with the quarters, bro? Like, you gonna talk about the quarters? Like, understanding that for some reason this child is fascinated instead of thinking something's wrong with this child.
That sounds like a replacement for a fidget.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I always just had this feeling that there was something off. I didn't relate as well to my family as my siblings did.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 3.
Okay.
Yeah, a brother and 2 sisters. And so I didn't relate well to my family. I was the child that didn't talk much, and they were the kids that talked a lot and entertained everybody, and I was just sitting off by myself.
Would talking too much seem exhausting to you as a child?
I think so. I it's like, it's not that I don't like to talk, but I'm very, it's like you have to talk about something that is so fascinating to me in order to get me talking. Yeah. Otherwise, no. No. Yeah. So, and that followed me pretty much for the rest of my life up until I was 18, when I was finally diagnosed with major depressive disorder. What
was that? Did something lead up to you getting diagnosed, or did you feel it was time?
I had started to become more seriously suicidal. I started to exhibit suicidal tendencies when I was 15, but I don't think anybody was aware. Yeah. But it became apparent when I was 18. I went away to college.
Before that, you said lightly, so there were steps towards it. Do you remember what a couple of those experiences were like for you? Not knowing something's wrong, but being at the point where it's like, nah, fuck this. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it was gradual. It was definitely just, I started having issues with my weight. I started experiencing just like uncomfortable feelings about my sexuality. Just a lot of different things that I didn't feel like, or I felt very consciously that I was like, this is something I can't even talk about. And so by the time I went away to college, I was in a lot of ways pretty isolated. And then it just started manifesting into these really unhealthy and kind of scary behaviors, some violent behaviors. And just it started growing into like just a consistent habit of self-harm, which carried on for about 5-6 years.
The first experience of self-harm, is that terrifying for someone in your position, or do you, I've heard people say you just want to feel something.
Wow, honestly, the scary part, the thing that's actually terrifying is how not terrifying it was. I wasn't afraid of it. Yeah. It was just like, this is what I'm gonna do. This is what I'm gonna do. And then sometimes it wasn't even a thought. It was more of a response. Sometimes I would just be emotionally unbalanced, and that would just be the response. It wasn't even something that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and I've done that. I've sat down and thought pros and cons, weighed it out, written a letter. But most of the time, or in the earlier stages of it, it was very impulsive. It was very just reactionary. It was just, one of them things that people would say, oh, you're just doing it to get attention. In reality, I couldn't tell you if that was true or not. All I know is that in that moment, that was what I felt.
You were dedicated to that thought. Yeah. For those people that have had the mitigated gall to say you're doing it for attention, what do you say to someone after coming out from that space?
I would say that even if that were true, it doesn't really matter. Because what's mattering is people who are feeling good or who are healthy are not doing that. Yeah. So if somebody is doing that, something is wrong, and you have to take it seriously. Now, granted, I understand where people come from in the sense that they feel manipulated by that behavior, and it can be manipulative. But you also have to understand normal people or healthy people don't do that. Regardless of what is motivating them to, they don't do it. They need help. Regardless, they still need help.
Yeah.
And so the question would be, how dedicated are you to this person? Are you willing to help them? Or do you want to just give it space? But you have to make up your mind. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I would encourage people who are involved with, have relationships with people who have mental health issues, is that you have to make a decision with yourself how much you love this person and how much you're willing to give to this person. But if it's hurting you, please make the decision to leave. But don't stay and then tell them that they're manipulating you.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's not gonna help, you know? Because half the time, even if that's the case, like, they still need treatment. They need someone that's actually going to medically help them.
They need a different kind of support.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it may not be what you can offer, and that's okay. But I understand also there's layers to it, and you know, the abuse is real, and like people do get gaslit into unhealthy relationships where somebody is abusive and using their mental illness as an excuse to terrorize people. That's never okay. But I think that it's important for us to remember that at the end of the day, there's still a sickness, you know?
Yeah.
So.
What advice would you give to someone trying to make an ideal environment for someone who struggles with that?
With, on the struggles with mental health, or somebody who's struggling with helping someone?
Helping someone who is suffering from suicidal ideations.
I think that there needs to be a support system for, everybody involved. I think
so. Not just the people supporting the person, but there needs to be support for the support.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There has to be reinforcements, because 1, 2, or 3 people can't do it by themselves. And so that's why it's so important for us to have a strong community that deals with these issues. Because if we're just relying on our interpersonal relationships to help us when we're depressed, it's going to exhaust everybody. Because let's be real, most people are not trained to deal with these type of situations. They have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
And we expect so much out of everybody when everybody is like, nobody knows. Even the people who are suffering from the illness don't know. Yeah. And the people who are trying to support those who are suffering don't know either. And so if we don't have a strong support system within the community, then that ultimately leads to more, issues where people are just draining themselves and killing themselves because they're not able to deal with the situations. So that's why we need to have affordable therapy. I think that we should construct a culture where we are able to provide therapy based on income and not just limiting people's access just because they can't afford it, because maybe they're not in a position to really help themselves because of what they're going through. So if you can help them get through it, then maybe they'll, be able to be more, involved in, or I guess more, be able to reach their potential, whatever that potential may be. Yeah.
Or be more inclined to step towards getting the help that they need.
Yes, exactly. And I think we also treat therapy and yoga as like, oh, let's make you a better person to produce for the society. It's not in any way concerned about making you healthier and just creating a happier space for people. It's like, oh, let's make you better so you can start earning more. let's make you better so you can start that business, or let's make you better so that you can. It's like whatever happiness is for you, find it. I don't give a fuck if it's under a bridge. I don't give a fuck if it's with $1 million. I don't give a fuck if it's with 5. I just want to make sure that you are happy with yourself.
Yeah. So
that you can enjoy whatever life you have in front of you.
Or what's left of you.
Yes, because this shit goes. We don't. If anything, if the pandemic should have taught us anything, is that we could go at any second. There's so many people that were with us 2 years ago that are gone, that we probably didn't even expect to go.
Whether it's passing away or they're just out of your life.
They're just out of your life. So it's just like, you know, it sucks that we have been conditioned to view our lives based off of what we will get to experience if we get a good job. We can't enjoy happiness until we reach that point. So we're spending every fucking day being miserable because we're not there. And that should be the opposite. We should be teaching each other and having a society that promotes people being happy wherever they are. It's just it's clear to me that this society doesn't care about that, and they want to just create more cogs in the machine. So it's almost very radical to even consider taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's not what this society is designed for. We don't give a fuck if you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's about how well are you going to be to suit me. You know?
How long can you fit here before we have to replace you with
someone
else?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When it's come to your healthcare provider, what does that relationship look like for you?
My healthcare provider. And just, is it like what
are your feelings towards them? Hey, you guys could do better. Don't make me go on Yelp about you.
Well, no, I've been lucky, very lucky, to have a healthcare provider that is understanding, that is very, I believe, committed to just helping people. And so they've thankfully been very helpful to me when I've gone through my ebbs and flows, because there have been times where I couldn't pay. There have been times where I could pay, but I couldn't pay as much as I was paying. And because we have a good relationship of trust, and they know that if I could do it, I would, and they know that I'm committed to making my life better, they hang in there with me. And I appreciate that. And I'm not saying that everybody has to do that. I feel like everybody should decide for themselves how they want to, you know, commit to this. But I do feel like there's a lot. I don't know. I don't want to say, because I haven't polled or experienced.
This is just about your experience.
Yes, but I feel like, I mean, considering how many people do not have access, there's obviously a discrepancy somewhere. And
there's many conversations you've had about people not having access.
People on the streets that clearly need help, that are not getting it.
People behind closed doors that are not on the streets.
And it's so many layers we could get into. But it's clear to me, it's very clear, again, that this society as an institution does not value mental health. Almost doesn't even really consider it as valid, or
they're waiting for you to prove it.
Right. Unless you have a missing limb that they can witness, or something that they could, you know, put under a microscope. As far as they're concerned, it's bull.
What is the insensitivity you've experienced to your experience from strangers? Take your time.
Insensitivity from strangers. You know, I've actually had less insensitivity, I think, from strangers, and more insensitivity from people closer to me.
Tell me more about that.
It's just, knowing, for example, knowing when something is causing a negative reaction from me and insisting upon doing it. Knowing that I'm a sensitive person, but insisting on saying things that are critical and kind of hurtful. Just, I don't know, not really. I just feel like there's a lack of understanding of the nuances of what I was going through. Because I felt like, to be fair to them, I can see why. Because the way I was going was terrifying. And I don't think I was, to be honest, I don't think I was a very safe person to be around. And so I can understand why there was a lack of patience and some insensitivity, because I didn't really have that for them.
Yeah.
Because I was stuck on trying to give it to myself. So that happens too. There's a lot of imbalance that comes with, dealing with relationships where mental health is involved. Because people feel like they're lacking on each end of the table. And it's like, how do we support everybody to make sure that everybody's feeling like they have what they need to go forward. And instead of trying to pull from an empty bag,
Okay, so when being triggered and having a moment, what do you do with that energy after overcoming the moment? What does that look like?
Ooh, there's no such thing as overcome. It's an interesting process. Because I am a ruminator, and that's something that's very characteristic of people who suffer from depression. And also, I think it's important that we make a distinction between major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, and all such disorders, depressive disorders, and having depression. Because anybody can experience a bout of depression. But I think it's important that we recognize that depressive disorder and all the other mood disorders are actual conditions.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make that distinction. But for me, triggers are sometimes hard because I have to go through several kind of processes of processing what the trigger is. Because sometimes I don't even realize I'm triggered until I find myself. And I know we've probably all had this experience where somebody would say something to you and you don't even realize that it bothered you until about an hour later. You like, damn, I can't believe they actually said that. But for me, it's like I have to process that for so long. What's the moment of realizing that you're triggered? It's like I notice I'm keep thinking about it. And then I notice that when I realize I'm really in a state of anxiety, or I don't know what it's called. I do a lot of self-talk outward. And sometimes it's to the point where I can't even control where I do it. Or when. So sometimes you might see me on the street and you might notice that I'm talking to myself. Sometimes audibly, you know what I mean? And I don't think I'm crazy or anything, but it is just a habit that I've learned to deal with some emotions that I'm having and processing them. Cope. Exactly. Yeah. But it also is how it helps me understand what it is that I'm feeling. Because sometimes I get triggered by something, I get mad about something, and I don't know why I'm mad, or I often question, should I be mad? And then I have to ask my friends, am I wrong for being mad? Is this... Should
Am I tripping?
Yeah, am I
tripping right?
Right, he's like, am I tripping? And so it's
Cleaning
like...
a butter knife. Am I tripping?
Yeah.
Just let me know.
Yeah, because you don't want to confront somebody with something that is just really off.
Or not theirs.
Or not theirs. It's yours, you know.
What's that like? When you let's talk about what's that like. Let's take our time.
Yeah.
What's that like?
It feels very difficult sometimes to discern when someone's actually hurt you or when you just feel hurt because of something that you're projecting from your past or whatever.
What's the difference?
I think the difference is kind of recognizing that
take your time.
it's interesting because it does kind of play with the concept of perspective, right? Because, for example, this person, like, for instance, somebody could say to me, like, okay, I'll give a life example that I've actually experienced. When I was growing up, I was called fat a lot. And I didn't particularly think I was fat. I thought I was chubby, but I didn't think I was fat. But I was called fat a lot. And I believe that I was called fat because the people calling me fat wanted me to do something about it. It was an anxiety that they had about my weight.
Yeah.
Now, granted, looking back, I will say my eating habits weren't well. My eating habits were just kind of like impulsive, and maybe I had an addiction to food, and I feel like I do, to some degree. But instead of saying that, they just called me fat. Yeah. So I wasn't able to get in touch with what the actual problem was, which is emotional eating. Yeah. It's about something bad about me. So I think if it's something that is not helping you, if it's not designed to help you, the words don't offer any service to you, then it's hurtful. And you should feel like you should defend yourself. And you should be able to say, hey, that's hurtful. But here's the thing that my therapist taught me is that when you say, there's a difference between saying that hurt me or you hurt me. And when you say you hurt me, it makes the person on the other end automatically feel defensive. Because what if that's not their intention? They didn't mean to hurt you. Now you're saying that I'm a hurtful person. Now you're judging my character by saying I hurt you as if I hurt you intentionally. So that person is now not able to access what is actually the thing that caused the hurt. They're only accessing, it was me, it's my fault, I'm wrong, I did something bad.
Not making space for empathy.
Yes, but they're also protecting themselves. So I think it's important that regardless of whether the hurt is coming from them or the hurt is something that you're projecting, it's important to just be able to say, that kind of hurt my feelings. That made me sad. That, was a little frustrating. That, just to indicate that you had a response to it, whether they meant it or not. Yeah. You responded to it in a way that felt uncomfortable. And it's important to just have a space where we can just acknowledge that and then talk about it, put it on the table. And
what do you expect from those talks? You can finish.
That's great that you said that because that's exactly where I was going. So it's interesting because we have an expectation. We have those talks. Somebody's going to apologize. If I'm hurt, I want to hear an apology. I don't want to hear your excuse. I don't want to hear what you thought. But for me, I do care about what you thought because what you thought changes the way I have the experience. Because if I know what you're thinking, I know what the intention was, and I'm able to receive what you were trying to say versus what I felt you said or what you did or whatever. And that changes the dynamic. But it's okay to apologize. Apologizing doesn't necessarily mean I'm a bad person. I've intentionally did something wrong.
Yeah.
It's just that if I were to get up and I'm about to say bye juice and I walk out and I accidentally knock over that camera.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to knock over the camera, but I just acknowledged that just my action knocked over the camera. And so I'm acknowledging to you that I care that I knocked the camera down.
Yeah.
It is important to me that I knocked it down, and I'm acknowledging that by saying I apologize for knocking down the camera. You know, just to recognize I'm sorry that happened, and that by happenstance I kind of caused it.
So it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't with intention of me.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had to repeat different versions of this conversation to the same person until they understood where you were coming from?
Ooh, man.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was never understood.
Never understood?
Never understood.
I'm a product of that.
Yeah.
I had to have 24 conversations. And I was the problem. And I had to have 24 conversations. And then one day I got it. And I think the first thing I said to my friend was, thanks for being patient, because I wouldn't have had that for you. I'm not that person. You feel what I'm saying? Like, I know because of how I was raised and who my parents are, I don't have that patience. And now that I received that experience, I'm going to go work on that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's important to be able to acknowledge, too, because sometimes when we experience that, it's hard for us to go back and say, actually, yeah, I fucked up, in order to allow the experience to teach you anything, So I think that's definitely important. I think in my case, I had a little bit of that too, where I realized, okay, where I can see part of the reason why I felt we were saying we kept repeating the same conversation, was because there was something on my end that wasn't accepting the fact that there was something else that we needed to be talking about, and we were trying to solve a problem, but we were trying to solve the wrong problem.
What do you mean by that?
I think there was a deeper reason why we were in that space to begin with. And we weren't acknowledging that. We were acknowledging all the other things that were happening as a result of that. But what was really happening was just, something that was probably deeply internal for both of us, that we both needed to explore within ourselves and be honest with each other about. To really navigate that, so that we could navigate from that perspective versus the perspective of how we feel in that moment and how we feel about the different things that are happening, within that relationship or whatever. So that's something that I had to recognize, is that whenever you're in a situation where you find yourself having the same conversation over and over and over and over again, is because there's something that both of you are missing.
Yeah.
And it's probably then time to step back to observe objectively what that is, and then try to come back in from a different vantage point. But if you keep, it's like you're saying it over and over again because you're looking for the point where it resolves. You're not finding the resolution. That's why you keep trying to get there. But if you're not getting there, that's because you're in the wrong space to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How important is it to understand the way people communicate, or how they would like to be communicated to? Yeah.
It's super important because it allows us to meet each other where we are. And this is something we were talking about, versus where we want them to be, or where we think they should be based off of our own traditions and our own values and our own morals and whatever. Everybody has different values. Everybody has different understandings of how to socialize. I looked up there's some places where maybe a wave to someone could be considered rude.
Really? Okay.
And or I don't know. For example, some people might not be like hugs. So they might consider a hug offensive.
Yeah, I've ran into that.
Yeah. Some people don't like being touched at all. Some people, I know me particularly, I don't like people talking to me very close to me. Like,
that's right.
I like to have.
Hey, where's the face at? What the fuck is so close?
Yes, I don't like people being so close to me.
Yeah.
And I also have I have a thing with eye contact, and some people consider that to be rude. You're supposed to look a person in the eye when you're talking to them, but you never consider.
What if they don't got it though?
Right, you don't think about people who are on the spectrum or have different social limits.
Too much eye contact can mean violence.
Right, or it could just be uncomfortable because I feel like you staring too deeply into me. It's just like, so.
Yeah, nigga, give me my soul back.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I like to have some distance. But
boundaries.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of just like being able to understand that we're all different and just be able to respect that. It's like, I know I might have a friend that only calls me every 3 months.
Let's go, friend.
You know what I'm saying? I know that this person, this is how they are. They disappear for 3 months. I am that person, by the way. I'm that friend.
You're the friend?
I'm that friend.
Okay.
I'm the friend that disappears.
Yeah.
I disappear for 3, 4, 5 months. And if we have a good relationship, you'll hear from me. But some people don't understand that. So they become offended by that. And I get it because their style of communication is at least check in on me around this time, around this date, around this, that, blah, blah.
Do you ever have to make a guidebook for situations like that for the new people?
I feel like I should. I feel like I should have like a manual.
Or just something like that. Like just a quickie.
Right.
Yeah.
Just some, just a,
10
Jenna Commandments.
10 Jenna Commandments. That's dope. That should be an album. That should be an album.
For real.
That's tight. Yeah, my bad. Keep going.
No, yeah. Something that gets, but I at the same time, it's just like, I think I'm just reached a point in my life where I just don't feel like explaining myself anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with explaining certain things to certain people that I've developed that type of relationship with. I don't know. I don't know. I might be the world's most professional ghoster. I don't know. But I just know that there's so much to try to maintain, so much connection. We are forcing connections all day long through social media, through texting, through calling, voicemails, emails. Everybody expects contact. And it's exhausting because think about all the people who attempt to communicate with us throughout the day and think about how many of those people, you actually communicate with.
How does that overexhaustion make you feel?
Resentful sometimes.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Because it's just like, aren't we, in my mind, I'm like, aren't we all going through the same, aren't we all having this experience? Am I the only one who feels overwhelmed by the excessive contact?
Yeah.
Am I the only one who feels weird that I'm expected to respond within 5 minutes of someone texting me? But then also sometimes I get it because sometimes I want to answer about something right away and I'm not getting it and I'm disappointed and then I start feeding thoughts into my mind. But we have to understand that 95% of that is our own shit. It's our own shit. Now there might be an off chance that there's a 5% that person is really blowing you off and really doesn't want to talk to you. But if that's the case, so what?
Yeah.
In my opinion, that means that we don't really have that type of relationship that they feel like they care enough to nurture. So why would I nurture frustration and anger over that? That's giving energy that they've already shown that they're not willing to give.
Yeah.
So it's still a one-sided relationship anyway.
Yeah, no, that's real. That's real. How do you readjust coming out of a depressive bout? Like, is there a routine you have for, I fell off the bandwagon? Actually, Yeah, let's start there, and then I have another question for you.
Sometimes you don't really know you fell off until you are all the way off.
Yeah.
It's like you're in a boat and you don't realize you've drifted all the way. You like fell asleep in the boat, and then you woke up and you didn't realize you drifted all the way away from the shore. You was just trying to chill. You was just chilling. You thought you was going to get a little ride down and you was going to come back, but you're way out now.
Can't even see the seagulls anymore.
You can't even see it. Now you're in a panic because you didn't see this.
Yeah.
And so then you have to go through this process of trying to get yourself back to shore, and it's exhausting, and nobody knows you're doing it because, again, we're experiencing time differently. Nobody knows that there is a whole 40 years happening in your mind of trying to get through your shit.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's hard. It's hard because, again, people see, like you said, people see you doing better. They expect that's...
They think that's it.
That's
like,
it.
No, you good.
You good.
Yeah.
And so to see you back into a space, it's like almost kind of feels shameful in a way. It's like, how did I get back here? I've done so well. How did I get back here? And then it gets worse when you start to think about all the things you start to let go of once you had found yourself back there. All the responsibilities that you let go of. All the conversations and friendships and connections that you did not nurture that whole period of time. And so now you have to deal with the guilt of that. So it's heavy, but my routine for dealing with that is just to start reading, have a spiritual reconnection, which is what I'm going through now, because I started to drift off a little bit because I had gotten COVID. And so I had gotten back into the habit of like reading the Bible every morning, reading something, spiritually developing in the morning, starting my day connecting to the spirit world. And then proceeding, and that's where I've started yet. So and then like making conscious efforts to, what I'm calling it radical effort. And basically it's like doing things that I know my mind is telling me it doesn't want to do, and making a big deal out of it to myself and saying like, my mind does not want to get out of bed. And so it's like, it's radical for me to get out of the bed. It's radical for me to brush my teeth sometimes. It's radical for me to take a shower. And when I think of it that way, it makes me feel so much more proud of myself.
Because you had to fight for it.
Yeah, that I had to fight for it. And to earn it motivates me to keep fighting.
Did you have a reward system like that growing up?
No, not growing up.
Is that something that you created for yourself?
I think I created it for myself. I had to find ways to reward myself other than food. And I think I just learned to reward myself with the satisfaction of knowing that I feel better because I did something to make myself feel better. And that's something that I feel like we normally take for granted. We take for granted the fact that we wash our hair to love ourselves. We take for granted that we brush our teeth to love ourselves so that we can take care of our teeth. And we take for granted that we take a shower because we love ourselves. We want ourselves to be clean. We want to make sure that we smell good and, we're well presented. That's something that just comes natural to most people. But for people with mental health conditions, it doesn't always come natural. Sometimes it requires a force of nature to push yourself just to do something. Because in essence, your brain is wired to exterminate yourself. So if you're wired to exterminate yourself, the act of self-love is you actively choosing to go to war with your brain.
You mean when you're wired to think a certain
Yes.
way, like in terms of depression or suicidal ideations?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's your natural inclination. That's where you're. I mean, I'm just saying from my perspective, mental health issues. And I'm not saying mental health because people keep saying mental health. Like,
nah, mental health is a state of
right.
where are you
Yes.
mentally. Mental health issues is depression, anxiety,
exactly.
Suicidal ideation. Those are issues
Right.
that you're dealing with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, mental health issues run in my family. So I believe that there is a predisposition for me. And because of that, it feels very natural and that's the weird comforting thing about depression is that it feels natural. You don't feel like you're fighting it.
You feel like it's a part of who
it feels like a part of who I am. I don't feel like I'm going against myself by being in that state.
Yeah.
I just know that when I look at myself in that state, I am going down. And that's the only thing that triggers me to fight against it.
Yeah.
Because fighting against it, in all honesty, it sucks. It's hard.
Yeah.
It is very hard work. It's exhausting. And this is something that I also try to explain to people. The effort, like just me getting, and I know everybody, a lot of people, most people, whatever.
But still, that
get up early and it's like, but like sometimes it just getting out of the bed at all.
Because you had to move the boulder that was on top of you.
Yeah.
Moving the covers to
Yeah.
get out of the actual bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just like feeling like, wanting to do anything. And I think it's fair that we recognize that, our society overworks the hell out of us. And so I think there is something, I hate to say natural, but natural in relationship to where we are as a society for people to generally feel like, oh, I don't feel like doing this. I don't want to do this. But for most people, I don't think it leads to them saying, I want to end my life. This is a representation of how bad of a person I am. And now I need to go start formulating a plan to get myself out of this world. And so that's important for us to recognize.
Is the headspace of someone who suffers from suicidal ideations the same as someone coming out of a depressive episode?
The headspace.
Are there similarities?
Yeah, the similarities. I think is just that feeling that you're on a crossroad, and that everything that you do, is important. Whether it's to, like everything has way more meaning. Because it feels like it literally feels like life and death. If I don't make this decision, ultimately I am going to die. Even if that decision is, if I don't go play basketball today, because I started playing basketball every day. If I miss a day, then ultimately I'm going to die because I am now starting to break my routine. And once I start breaking my routine, then that means more routines that have kept me healthy are going to be broken.
Yeah.
And eventually I'm going to lead back into a state of depression. Or, if I'm already suicidal, it's a battle really about, the battle is really about literally staying alive. Because in that sense, once you're in a state of suicidal ideation, it is a slow death. It's a slow death. And that's something that I don't think people understand.
Explain that.
Because once you, and this is just, again, this is the way I process it. Right.
Yeah.
Once you pattern your brain to thinking of or having a certain intention that you feed it every day, just like I have the intention to walk and I set it in my brain, and then all of a sudden I get up and I start walking, or I have intention to move my hands or intention to talk. Once that becomes a part of your intention every day, that's your diet, your body is going to respond to that.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling like killing yourself, then your body is going to stop doing the instinctual things that it does to stay alive. And so does your brain, because your brain is telling everything. Okay, this we're getting out of here, so we're going to stop functioning.
Yeah, slowly moving.
Yes.
Yeah.
So ultimately, if you don't break out of that space, you're going to continue to cultivate that, that energy or those actions that will ultimately, could ultimately at least lead to an actual attempt, which is what I've learned just from my own experience. So I think that it's important to get to a space where you're set, even if you don't necessarily believe it, because like they say, you tell yourself something enough times, it becomes true. It's just like your brain is a computer, and if you program your brain with this information enough times, and eventually it'll start responding to that. So
that was a great answer.
Oh, thanks.
No, that was a great answer. It's a here to learn experience, because do I work with professional therapists? Yes. Do I work with people who are professionally in the wellness area when it comes to yoga, sound bowls, marijuana, and a couple other things? Yes, I do. But it's important to hear stories of people like yourself and what they're going through to understand, hey, the approach, what's actually happening to them, how does the world look through their eyes? Because stuff like this will let me know, hey man, respect that person's schedule. They got a routine for a reason. The routine's necessary. How do you add to their routine? Or can you make a purchase so that's one less purchase for them to make, and that's how you instill yourself into their life and what they have going on and what's necessary if you want to be that. So for someone who is currently adjacent to someone like you, whether it be a friendship or a relationship, what piece of advice would you give to that person?
Just be patient. I obviously don't want to tell anybody to do anything that they don't want to do, but if you want to interact with me and be within that space with me, all I'm asking is for patience, because I understand that it's not easy for all of us right now. We have basically collectively survived a really crazy global event. Let's just start there. Let's forget about all the past shit that we were carrying, because Lord knows we have so much genetic just memory of crap, but just here right now where we are, it's been a hell of a situation that I can tell has affected everybody mentally.
Yeah. You can tell their way of thinking has changed.
Yes, and if you didn't have a mental condition or disorder before then, a lot of people probably have one now.
Yeah.
And so just understanding that, and I know that sometimes it's hard to be patient because you don't want people to just take you for granted, and you don't want people to take your patience for weakness and take advantage of it. Yeah. So it's important to learn to discern, but even still, understanding and expecting people to be who they are and understand where they are. And if you can ride with it, cool. If you can't, that's cool too.
Yeah.
But just, try not to come into situations all the time with your expectations, and try to meet somewhere in the middle. Because you might learn something. I've definitely learned a lot about relationships and friendships and things that I feel like I want to integrate into my the way I treat people and the way I see people and communicate with people.
Yeah.
And so that's a benefit. But then there's, there's differences, and respecting those differences, and respecting that those differences don't necessarily have to mean that somebody doesn't care about you or doesn't love you or doesn't think, you're great, but just they have a different way of approaching and expressing those things.
Yeah. Every time you said differences, I just heard like genuine in the background. Yeah. It's not about you.
Yeah.
Within your experience, what's the importance of friendships in your life?
I'm definitely learning to value my friendships more. But also learning what I want out of a friendship.
What do you want out of a friendship?
I think it's interesting because I've always been just comfortable with the idea of a friend being someone that I can talk to, that I can vocalize things with, that I can laugh with, that is there for me in certain events that happen in my life, or, support me when I need help or something like that. But I'm learning through some friendships that I've gained that it's also about creating experiences with people that are valuable and that you cherish, something that, 50 years down the road, you can say, remember that, remember that. And also just about sometimes being spontaneous, I've never been the type of person, I won't say that. I have friends that sometimes they'll give me something that I didn't expect them to give me. Or I'll come over their house and they'll be like super hospitable, and I'm just like, you don't have to be. Like, this is not a requirement. I am totally comfortable just coming into your house and having conversation with you. You don't have to offer me nothing. It's cool. If I want something, I can ask for it. But when you're on the receiving end of it, it feels really beautiful that somebody took the time out to really think of you that deeply, even if you didn't require it, that feels good. And so while I still say it's not a requirement, you don't have to give me nothing, you don't have to, it's fine. But just to be able to know that I made someone feel nice in that moment, just because I thought of it, it's such a beautiful thing that I don't feel like is promoted very much in our very individualized society. To think about, the collective happiness of others. My phone is going to go through it.
You're good.
But yeah, so that it's challenged me to think of friendships in a different way, and to think of more ways that I could be a friend.
Are there goals you've had to set for this year? Is it good to have goals as someone who balances what you balance?
I think it's important to have goals, but not to be so married to them in a sense that you feel like your life is over if you don't accomplish them. Because your goals can change.
Yeah.
Also, and sometimes it's okay to realize, like, hey, like, I thought I was going to, like, to say, if I were to say my goal is to sell out 2 million tickets by March, that is a crazy goal in my opinion. And so it's okay to, like, be like, maybe my goals are a little out there, but it doesn't mean you can't set them, but just have fun about it. Like, if you probably ain't going to reach 2 million, but you're having fun with the idea of trying. Let it motivate you to try, but don't be disappointed when you don't get 2 million. Just allow your goals to push you in a way that is exciting and that is enjoyable. It's just like people who train. Like, I used to train Taekwondo.
Shout out to Taekwondo.
Yeah. And I didn't get a red belt. I stopped at red belt, but I didn't get a red belt right away. I had to train for Yeah, for years until I got it. And, you know, I had to enjoy those moments in between where I was training to get to the red. And because if I didn't, I couldn't enjoy where I was at. It would never be enough until I got to the red. So it's just like, have the goal, but it's okay if it takes 5 years. It's okay. At this point, the only people that care about when you reach a goal is you and people that need to mind their business. Those are the only two people that like really care that much about it. So it's like, at the end of the day, it's your life. You know, who are you impressing? You know what I'm saying? It's just live your fucking life.
Yeah.
And have fun with it.
Yeah.
It's like, I wanna learn how to skip rocks on the lake. Am I gonna get upset with myself if I can't do that? No, I'm just gonna have fun learning to skip rocks on the lake.
Yeah.
And if I manage to learn how to do it before I die, that's excellent. If I don't, at least I had fun learning, trying, practicing.
Yeah.
You know?
What would you say to your younger self if you could, from everything you've learned so far?
Relax. It's not that serious. It's not that deep. It's okay. You are fine. You're smart. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. Not even to yourself.
Yeah.
Just do it and have fun. And that's it.
Okay. Where can the people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Jenna Camille, SMG. And you can also Google me. I am Googleable. So go ahead and do a Google search, and I'm there.
What about your band's page? Because you guys killed that.
Oh yes, Golden Brown. Yes, please follow Golden Brown. It's Brown with the E at the end. On Instagram. We're not on Twitter, I don't think. Spotify, Bandcamp, Apple Music, all the stuffs. It's Golden Brown with a E.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the interview. Thank you for pulling out.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course, of course. We've been talking about this for a minute, so I'm glad we can do this. I can't wait to put this out and crack jokes and do videos based off this, and like have you loop in also. But all right, this has been another episode of Mental Health Monday with your boy Juice. See you guys later. Peace.
Peace.